I'm like, well, okay. So
So, yeah.
hopefully welcome back. If not, welcome to Busy Reading Romantasy. I am Callisa, and this is the podcast all about mostly romantasy books. There's a little asterisk. Sometimes we go down like dark romance or just kind of some different genres around it, where we basically mostly look into kind of following our curiosities, open-mindedness, the things that we love and maybe don't always love about the books that we read. And this should be noted that although it is the beginning, like this episode is going to be coming out in 2025, we are still recording this in 2024. And Gabby and I were just talking about this as this like weird week in between Christmas and New Year's. Like time kind of fails to exist for a little bit. And like things are just genuinely crazy. So this is kind of our plans have changed a few times. We're going with the flow, but we've made it. We're here. And I'm here with Gabby. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Couldn't be bothered to wash my hair, so this is where we're at today. And yeah, it's been great.
Like we said, that weird in between time between, holidays and we don't want to do anything, like wash your hair. It's fine.
Yes, my sister came over yesterday specifically. We went to Sam's and got like sushi and pizza and like a few random cinnamon rolls and just like sat on the couch all day. And it was a great day.
Oh, yeah, no, I love that. I started a book nook and I've just been doing that and like reading, and I haven't had a chance to just lump and like rot, in so
Yeah,
long.
yeah.
So it's been
I
awesome.
I started mine. I got to step like 6 and I was like, yeah, I think I'm done for today.
Oh my God. Yeah, I'm splitting up because it is way more involved than I thought. Like
Yeah,
I opened it and I was like, oh, this is like a model. Like if you've ever done a model, like a historically accurate model of anything, like my
yeah.
husband, he does planes and shit. Oh my God. I had to like put in wiring these lights, and I'm like, oh, I'm an electrician now. Like,
I'm I'm worried about when I get to that part.
yeah, it's rough. And my brother was like, well, I would have liked to do that with you. You don't have the hands for it. I'm sorry. Like,
I got a little dragon model for my friend and it's all like the baby little screws and I was helping him out with it and I was like, see, the small hands really come in handy because it was rough. But yeah, I'm excited to continue my venture on and I was like, I think I did an hour and I've made like a little potion shelf and I was like, cool, I'm done.
yeah,
We'll get there.
yeah. That was my whole first day. I made a bookshelf.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. But otherwise, if you would like to kind of introduce yourself, tell people where they can find you, all of that great stuff.
Yeah, so I'm Gabby. I just recently started getting into like social media for books, primarily romantasy, dark romance. So I'm on Instagram, Gabby Gets Reading. All lowercase, no like periods or anything in between. Yeah, I'm just kind of having fun on there so far. I post book reviews and some reels, book recommendations, things like that. So yeah, it's been really fun so far. Um, Other than that, yeah, I'm thinking about starting YouTube, but I'm scared, so I'm holding off on.
Ooh, you should do it. You should do it. It's always fun. More work,
Maybe
more
one day.
content. That would be awesome. So we met at Romantasy BookCon. We have probably one of my favorite meetings when I think of like how I've met all of my friends because we decided to go to, we didn't know each other obviously. I decided I'm gonna go do this like class where we can decorate our very own like prosthetic elf ears. So much fun. And we get into this class, and I end up sitting next to Gabby. And immediately, like, just it couldn't have worked out better because the class was already running late. And then the lady who taught it was so nice, and she was like having us basically mix paints to match our skin color, which we were incredibly, unbelievably bad at. Like, Gabby's was like 10 shades too dark. Mine was like white. And, like
Yeah.
I had no concept of what was happening, and we just pretty much like laughed the whole time. I have you washed yours off to like restart?
The paint is totally gone. This is just like what
Oh,
it
okay.
used to
Yeah.
be. It rubbed
Amazing.
off immediately. Like it she said like it was gonna flake. Yeah. It totally flaked.
It flaked all off. Yeah, so we took way too long to mix the color and then we had to like Mod Podge it, but then well, you had to head home. I had to get ready for this like ball or whatever was going on that night and like the craziest, most funny situation ever. And thus we became friends. And then I found out that we actually lived not too far from each other. So thus, I was like, hey, we got to get you on the podcast. Let's talk about some books and how we've gotten here today. We're going to be talking about Pestilence by Laura Thalassa. Such pretty books. I just got the other three, and like, I'm so excited for Death because that book is just like beautiful. So overall, non-spoiler thoughts. We'll start there. Non-spoiler thoughts of the book before we like hop into specifics.
Non-spoiler thoughts. I don't mind like religious-y tones in books, right?
Mhm.
I was actually reading it alongside a friend who I told her about the series, like, hey, I'm reading Pestilence for a podcast I'm gonna be on. You should read it with me. And we got into it. She was like, no, it was really good, but religious. And I was like, well, yeah, but Laura Thalassa, she did it so well. Where like if you're not religious and you don't like reading about that type of thing, um, it still had such great like themes that you can apply in your everyday life. And there was points of the book, like I went into it, I'm not gonna lie. I went into it being like, oh, it's gonna be like smut with, God themes. But it was so deep and like reading it, I was like, wow, it really made me question things about humanity. And it makes you think, like, is what Pestilence is doing kind of justified? Like, I felt myself questioning that multiple times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, does this make me a bad person?
I
But
love
yeah,
that.
I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think any book that gets you to kind of question maybe yourself, your thoughts, maybe why you're thinking a certain way, I think is a book that has done its job, if that's the intent. But um I was excited. I love any good like end of the world. I'm kind of like a glutton when it comes to that stuff. So I was excited to jump in around like I had never read a book or a series with like this concept.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was excited.
Yeah, I think I think this was the first like apocalyptic book that I've read. And yeah, like it being sort of like end of the world-y. I was like, how does she make this into a good thing? How does she make this into a good story? Because even after Pestilence does his thing and like all these people are going through their end,
Mhm.
um, how do you get to the end of the book and it be like still, oh, this is a happy ending? And the way that she wrapped it up, like I couldn't have been more satisfied with it because it had
Yeah.
the harsh you know bad endings for those individual people, but the book itself, the ending, she wrapped it up really well while still setting up for the next book, War. And yeah, I think
Yeah.
she did a great job.
I will say I was very surprised at how it ended. I was not expecting that at all. So that's
I one thing a little spoilery. I hate when books And like authors, they make their characters split up for an amount of time,
Mm,
then it doesn't feel justified.
mm,
But this period of time that they spent apart, it really felt like necessary. And it was
yeah.
probably the only time I read that in a book that I was like, yeah, no, 100% that needed to happen. So I
Mhm.
was glad she did that too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as usual, the way we kind of do things is I like to do kind of a speed run of more specifics throughout the book. So this is where we'll get into 100% spoilers. And then at the very end, we'll kind of again zoom out and talk about the things that we liked, the things that we didn't like, and our thoughts for the next, because this is a four-book series. So Pestilence starts when the four horsemen have arrived, and we get our main character, Sara, who is a firefighter, which I thought was cool. I don't know that I've, granted, I read a lot of fantasy, so I don't know why that fact particularly. I was like, oh, cool. Like, and it's kind of just, it tends to be a male-dominated field. Um, she draws, the short stick, the black stick essentially, and she knows that, she's gonna die. They're trying to get everyone out of their town as pestilence comes through. Um, so she stays behind as everyone evacuates, and she shoots him off of his horse. She shoots the horse, lights him on fire. She's like throwing up, passes out. Incredible violence right off the bat, I will say. What were your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think that was like first or second chapter. First of all,
Yeah.
the fact that they think that a shotgun blast to the face is gonna kill a horseman of the apocalypse, I was just like, come on.
They
Like
really
you're
tried.
tripping. Oh my gosh. And then the way that all went down trying to kill him, so she shoots him. He comes off the horse, but he's still like breathing, but her gun got kicked away. So she's like, the best the best course of action here, set him on fire. Don't go get the gun. And it's
Obviously.
like, wait, no, yeah, let's boil him alive. Oh my God. I was like, wow, this really set the tone for this book because it was gruesome. She
Yeah.
really yeah, it was very visual.
Yes, yes, it was. Yes, it was. And he's like half melted and he's like, I will make you suffer. And already, ironically, we kind of get this like bit where she's like, he'd be kind of attractive if I didn't have to like do all this, if he wasn't like bringing about the end of the world. So that's always, the little kind of undercurrent thread in there. Um, and that's when, obviously, spoiler, he doesn't die. Wouldn't be that easy. We're not surprised here. And he's like, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna make an example of you. And we get into this whole like kind of captive captor situation. Um, and he is really hard on her. She he ties her up and like she has to run as he's on the horse and like exhaustion sets in and everything. She's like collapsing and he makes her rest, but then she apologizes. She tries to apologize for trying to kill him. And which off sorry. Sorry I
Yes.
set you on fire.
Yeah, like not sorry for trying to kill you, but sorry for the way I went about it.
Right, exactly. And so she kind of gets this moment where she tries to run for it, and he literally shoots her twice. It ties her up yet again and is like, we gotta go. Again, it's pretty graphic off the bat. And like I was just talking about this with a friend of mine, Alyssa, where I was like, when it comes to slow burn, I like when you really have to work for it. The fact that he just shot her and was like, let's go, we gotta go. You're like, he's not playing around.
No, and people talk about, you know, true enemies to lovers. And even that has its own like subjectivity to it, right? But
Hmm.
I think everyone can say like this was a true enemies to lovers because she the way she went about trying to kill him, him shooting her, literally dragging her behind his horse,
Hmm.
um, and then like nursing her back to health from that. It's like I felt myself wanting them to be together so bad, of course. Um, but then questioning myself, being like, am I okay? Because
Yeah.
what they've been through, the fact that I'm still like, yeah, be together. What the fuck?
Right, right. No, I felt that. I was like, you just don't understand. They just need to see each other's like point of views,
Yeah,
and
right.
you do not get quick satisfaction in this book, I will say. So she passes out again, and he does care for her. And again, I think that's like us being eager to be like, ooh, he's taking care of her. No, no, he just knows like fragile human body is he wants to make this, he's gonna drag it out again to make an example of it. Um, and also as they start to move throughout wherever they're at, I think was she up in Canada?
Yeah, I was Canada.
Yeah, yeah. So as they're starting to move around, we start to see a bigger view of what pestilence is doing, of when, kind of how this sickness is overtaking people and just kind of killing everybody. And then, he's already moving on. And it's just this kind of continuous cycle. So she sees a man infected. And again, we get even more graphic scenes of like people breaking out in all these like sores, and it's not a fun death.
No, and like I another question I kept asking, like, I get you have a job to do, God set his horseman, whatever, to kill humanity, but you can't do it a little faster? Like these people are dying in like 4 days, sores all
Yeah.
over the body. I
Yeah.
mean, surely there's some other type of pestilence that is faster. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
it's I guess does that like drive his point of like, well, okay, that was me having a whole debate in my head for a second there. I was like, so theoretically, right? If humanity is so terrible, God could just, clap his hands, whatever, and like we could all die. The idea of pestilence, I was like, is the point that we kind of see our mistakes and like maybe some people who can survive could potentially like rectify them? Because I feel like, granted, it's been a little while since I've read this book at this point, but like, I feel like Pestilence very much had that attitude of like, it's hopeless for humanity. They've already done their damage and now they're just gonna all die. Which then, yeah, in your case, why drag it out? You know?
Yeah. Um, no, I get that, but if people are seeing, how others are dying and they're trying to rectify the like mistakes they made, the bad things they've done, at that point, is it to avoid their own suffering or truly because they want to do better?
Right. That's a good point. And I feel like that was a point in the book as well of like, self-serving versus like if they had actually cared about bettering humanity, they wouldn't have gotten to this point. So lots of
Mhm.
deep theoretical
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
questions.
Like the book throughout it, I was like, I kept having these thoughts, and I'm like, wow, there's not that many books that like kind of bring that out in me. So I was
Yeah.
I was really surprised at that.
Yeah, yeah. So our main girl Sarah, she does keep the man that she encounters. She keeps him company until he dies, and I think that's us like seeing her character a bit more and her kind of humanity and wanting to help others in a situation where like there is very little she can do to begin with. They continue to move on, noting she is riding in the horse now, so he's no longer making her run after the horse. She has a little bit of rest. Um, and we get to chapter 11. So the whole thing is they're kind of going from town to town, and because of her, essentially they have to like rest for the night. Um, chapter 11, I give myself very sparse notes that are maybe like a sentence or two. And my first note is he comes out naked, unbothered. It's
Yeah.
like, great. And he tells her to remove her shirt and um he fights her on it because he wants to change her bandages. And this is where we get more of his like how unhuman he is, where like he doesn't have kind of our mm, ideals of like modesty and what kind of is and isn't normal behavior. He just is very, this is my goal, this is my purpose, that's it.
Yeah, he doesn't get embarrassed like humans do about nakedness.
Yep, yep. So he does. He watches her bathe to make sure like she's still pretty injured and helps her get her back and everything. And in them having a little bit more conversation, we also get to the point where he mentions that he was actually not given a name. He just goes by Pestilence, and that kind of becomes like a running thing as well, because well, I want to attribute it to like a human thing of like having a name and kind of a purpose and everything. And that's kind of what hmm, Sarah's sharing her humanity in a sense.
Yeah, like she's in, she's injured and being very human, in a tub, like not doing okay. And he is just like reminding her that just recently he was not even in a physical form, like he wasn't a man.
Right,
And like she feels some kind of like softness towards him. Um, and then like she has to quickly remind herself, she has to constantly remind herself rather, like he is he is pestilence. Like he didn't start out as this physical being. He is like sickness and he is only here for
yeah,
one
yeah.
purpose. Yeah.
Which I feel like for me that was kind of like a hard, not concept to grasp, but like I feel like I'd have so many questions. Like, what do you mean? What was there before? Like, what do you
Yeah, and I think that in itself is like a human thing to do. Like we can't comprehend
Yeah,
what he is, and that just goes to show how far beyond humanity he is, you know what I mean?
right, right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, he so they're slowly starting to exchange more information, but obviously it's kind of like through little snippets of conversation. Neither is like necessarily too eager to like open up to one another. Obviously, they haven't started on the greatest of terms. And another point that I wanted to mention was that she needed more bandages and she asks him not to go to the hospital, but he doesn't listen because obviously wherever he is going is spreading. So she kind of comes up with the idea like, well, trying to keep him away from certain places or she's tracking where he's going if it's going through big cities or kind of if they're more in the middle of nowhere and all that. Um, she starts to ask him like she asks him if they can stay and not travel in a specific day and he doesn't listen because again like she's trying to find ways to slow this down or kind of doing what she can. They're still up in the north and at one point she gets so cold she ends up passing out. She's like hypothermic and she wakes up cuddled up next to him. Unfortunately, they are in a house that has kids. It's like a full family. And she's like trying to beg him not to let them die. And again, he's like, no, this is my job and I can't do anything about it. Which that argument quickly hmm, gets negated when obviously, like, the longer she's gone on, she has not died. So clearly he has that power. He's just also like very mission oriented and won't stray. So this was another really sad moment now that they're in the house with the family because she helps out the family. The dad dies first, then the son goes, then the mom, and then finally the youngest daughter. And this is where we get him admitting that he doesn't like watching them die, which is kind of why it was noted that a lot of the times as they would die, he would just kind of disappear and like be doing his own thing. Which brings into question, okay, you don't like part of your main purpose, so like what's going on?
Yeah. And one thing about the scene with the family when they're in the house, I think this was when the mom asked her, like, "Hey, how are you still alive? Like, why is he keeping you alive? How do I
Hmm.
stay alive and my daughter?" Um, and uh, she like couldn't be honest um entirely with the mom, because she's like, oh, it started out as I am his prisoner. He's keeping me alive so that I can suffer. But that we see that grow into like, no, no, not really anymore.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and that really hit me because this mom was like begging her, like, please help us however you can. And
Hmm.
she tries to like get Pestilence to show them mercy, but in the end, he's still stuck on like this is my purpose. I'm not gonna change who I am. Blah blah blah. So, um, yeah, that I really teared up at that one because like when there's kids involved, it's like ugh, why the children? And he does make a good point. Like
Hmm.
they're gonna grow up and they're gonna remember what happens. And yeah, that really hit me in the feels.
Yeah, yeah, no. And I think Laura does a really great job of showing a wide array of humanity. So we get some people who are trying their hardest to figure out how to save themselves and not die. We get people who kind of have accepted it. We get people who are begging. We get people who turn to like anger and harming and it kind of all it's interesting to see everyone's different reactions and kind of last ditch attempts to save themselves as we go along this journey, you know.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Because the hate, because like you said, like the range of emotions in this book, the one side where there's so much hate and like
Hmm.
animosity towards Sarah because she is alive, like being kept alive.
Hmm.
Um, and the attempts made on her life as they're like traveling and like people see on the news, hey, there's this woman traveling with pestilence. What the hell? They there's some people that they're like, oh, they believe, oh yeah, she's a prisoner, she's being kept against her will, blah blah blah. And then other people that are like, oh, she's like his whore basically.
Hmm.
And yeah, they, man, like the things that they tried to do to her,
Hmm.
just sick. Ugh. Yeah, she did a great job showing the range of humanity's like emotions there.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So they move on and kind of in him learning a little bit more about humanity and the fragility of humanity, he makes her a nice little jam sandwich to go. Because again, at the very beginning, he had no consideration around like we need to use the bathroom and we need to eat and we need water, or else we will die probably pretty quickly. Um, and I think we see her, she's always been very I'd say brave. She's definitely a very brave character and in this case, I don't remember the exact situation, but she tells him to shut her up, kind of I think her just being like um clearly she hasn't died at this point. So she gets a little more comfortable, I think, pressing buttons in kind of just trying to get more information and see what's going on. And in this case, he ends up gagging her, but he calls her a little human. And I wrote, I love it. I don't think she does, but as a reader, I was like, yes, it's happening.
Yeah,
It's
oh
my
my gosh.
moment.
Yeah, and I think if I'm remembering correctly, right before they he like made her the jam sandwiches, that was when he tried apple pie, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so he starts to experience a lot more of what humans do. And, he didn't have to eat before, he didn't have to sleep. And so
Hmm.
I think the first thing was she tries to share hot chocolate with him.
Hmm.
He didn't want to drink it, he wasn't having it. He starts to pour it out, and she like freaks out, like, what the hell? Because, they're traveling, they don't
Yeah.
come across good food, good drinks a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so like later that night or soon after that, they get to the house, there's apple pie, and she offers him apple pie to get him to try it and like make him realize that it's not about necessity, it's enjoying life for humans.
Hmm.
Like, you don't have to eat apple pie. Apple pie is just delicious. You do it because it
Yeah.
tastes good. Um, so he starts eating it, and like he realizes, oh, I can just do things to enjoy them, to enjoy
Hmm.
life. It's not everything has to be out of necessity. Um, of course,
Hmm.
then she gets all mad because he starts to eat all the apple pie, but
Yeah.
that was like, yeah, another like us seeing him build up his humanity.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
that was a cute
yeah.
moment.
And again, what a beautiful show of like the duality of humanity, of like being like, here, have something, here, have some of what I love, and then also being like, oh, but I really like this, and it would be nice to have it all myself, you
Right, but
know?
relax, I want more.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. So, this is, as you said, we're kind of getting to more of the people who hold on to like anger and in their desperation, and they get into a larger city, and all of a sudden they're getting shot at. He pushes her down and like off the horse, and so she's by herself, but then he ends up coming back and grabbing her. He passes out, so then she gets them to safety. So now the dynamic has shifted where his life, granted, it's not necessarily like at risk, but that's when he's the most vulnerable. So obviously, she gets him out to help protect herself. I thought it was interesting. So we haven't mentioned that Pestilence he has a bit of a uniform. She puts on his chest plate and crown and like puts on his things as she's like dragging him to the house and starts to tend to him. She does give him some alcohol, and he admits that he likes her. A lot happened in those two chapters. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge shift. I mean, like you said, like she now is in a position that she has to take care of him. Not has to, because like he can't die, but
Mhm.
can feel pain, and that's her point, because he keeps
Yeah.
saying like, I'm gonna be fine, dude. Like, why are you going through all this trouble? And she's like, because you do still feel pain. Like, I don't want you to be in pain, essentially.
Mhm.
And like, I think that really hits him. Like, oh, she cares about me. Like, she does not want me to be in pain. um, and then, like you said, on top of that, another human vice, he gets to try alcohol, and the effects of alcohol. Honestly, I didn't think were gonna affect him the way that it
I
did.
agree.
Because I was like, wait, he's a god. Surely he's not gonna
Yeah.
get drunk. But yeah, he does. And yeah, so they that honesty comes out of both of them, because
Mhm.
inhibitions are lowered. But yeah, I those two chapters, yeah, huge shift in the book.
Yeah, yeah. He almost kisses her, but she says please. And that's been another running thing that we haven't mentioned yet, where it seems that anytime she asks for something, if she says please, especially, he immediately like locks down. He's not for it, and he's gonna, go on and do it anyways, because I think I attribute that to like probably he deals with a lot of people probably begging for their lives or, whatnot. I don't know. Again, it's been a little while since I've read this book, but I was kind of thinking, I think I was hoping that she was so smart that she would kind of like reverse psychology to see if that worked, to be like, I don't know, to get him to do the opposite, to be like, please, can we keep going? Let's go faster or something to see if he would, if she said please, though, if he would deny it. I don't know.
I think, and this is just like my personal experience, but when you when someone is like asking you for something and it like kind of reminds you of what you're supposed to be doing. So he's like, oh wait, she's my prisoner. I shouldn't
Mhm.
be like giving her things that she wants. So she's asking like, please spare the hospital, please, like, can we not go that way? And he's like, oh, I remember now. No, fuck you. And yeah, every time I'm just like,
Ah, come on.
I like just because usually in books, like it's the opposite, the male main character, they hear please and they're like a simp for their for their
Yeah.
woman. I'm like, oh, please for sure, that's gonna work. Nope.
No, not in this case. No, does the opposite. So of course we got to keep moving. They set off the next morning, and I did know that morning she has to puke, and I'm like, mm.
Every time that there's puking or like nausea in a book, I'm like, no, please. I'm not for the pregnancy trope. Ugh.
Um, so also we get his horse who can magically traverse water, which also my brain I think had a great time like picturing them just galloping over the water.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then yeah, I have so many questions because, and I love, look, again about Laura Thalassa's books,
Yeah.
like she incorporates a lot of thoughts that I think readers probably have because they get on the water and I'm like, well, but what if she like falls off immediately? She answers that.
Immediately.
I was like, oh, very good.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes, and he is like, "You can't die." And I'm like, "Yes. Amazing." He takes her back so she can bathe and change and get warm, and off they are again. Now they're like off the grid. They've kind of been staying in more towns and cities, so he grabs a small tent for them to go camping. And I pulled a quote, and this is all of Pestilence's charm wrapped up in one sentence. Your form is oddly pleasing to me.
Oh my
Like,
gosh. Yeah. I
yes.
think I also highlighted that. That's so funny because yeah, she even questioned, she's like, I'm sure that there was a bigger tent. Like, why would he grab the smallest tent that they had?
Right.
Because
Right.
he finds your form oddly pleasing.
Yeah, yeah. So things are getting a little bit more steamy. And interestingly, he's like, "Is this love?" And she's immediately like, "Nope, no, it is not. This is just lust." And they kind of stop what they're doing and, cuddles her to sleep. But now we start to see more like recognition of feelings developing where I think Pestilence is just confused because obviously he's never experienced this. And then Sarah naturally is like anyone in their sane mind would probably be like, I'm crazy. He just tried to kill me a few days ago. Like, this can't, no, it's not happening.
Yeah. This struggle, I was so there for it. Like like you said in the beginning, like the slow burn and like the way they fought each other. It was so frustrating, but like it really fed a part of my soul. Like I was like, oh, they like over and over and over again. He tries to kiss her, and then he's like, "You're my prisoner. I'm gonna hurt you." Blah blah. And like the way that they just could not give into their feelings, it pissed me off so bad. But also
Yeah.
like when it did happen, man, this book was so good. The way that she did.
Yes. I feel that that's it. You start rooting for it and you're like, I need this.
I need
It's like SpongeBob needing water.
it.
Um, yeah, exactly. So they continue on, and this is where we get another view of humanity, where we get the anger not directed towards Pestilence and everything he's causing, but now it's towards Sara. And the house that they're at, this man is calling her a whore and saying that, she's only alive because she's letting him touch her and everything. And it's rough. It's like kind of the epitome of like a disgusting guy that's like just blaming the woman in this case. To the point where the husband wakes Sara up and out of bed and is threatening to kill her. Of course, Pestilence is not going to let that happen. And this is where he makes the bold claim that God has said that she should be spared, which is also interesting. What were your thoughts about that whole little section?
So, as you were talking about it, I think actually this was the family where the mom was like, "What are you doing? Like, save my daughter." But anyway, yeah, when the dad pulls her, like the way he treats her and then like pulls her out of bed to like kill her, um, like this is another part of the book where I was like questioning my own morals because I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
you need to kill this man right now.
Yeah.
I was like, death to him. Yeah, and even Sarah, like she thinks like she starts to think like, yeah, this guy doesn't deserve to live. He doesn't deserve to be spared.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it was rough because that was an internal struggle for her. But also, I think Pestilence showed more mercy than he normally would have in that situation, because of how Sarah has been with, humans up to that point. So that was another like pretty cool switch up to see. She was like, yeah, he sucks, kill him. And the Pestilence was like, no, I'm trying to show mercy.
Mhm.
Um, when I was really like, no, please just end this guy's life. Oh my gosh. And I think he spared him like twice.
Mhm.
If I remember correctly, yeah. Oh, that whole situation just pissed me off. And like you could tell he totally abused his wife and probably the kid too. Like
Mhm.
yeah, I wish that he would have died sooner. That's just me.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Which again, going through like a full array of emotions throughout this book. So they move on once again. This time they're heading to Seattle, which is very close to my hometown. Just like, oh no. She finds a flyer that identifies that there's a woman traveling with Pestilence. So now kind of essentially the cat is out of the bag in terms of like knowing that there's someone with him. He's not alone anymore. And this is where they stumble across Rob and Ruth. They were absolutely my favorite throughout this whole book. Elderly couple, so they have just accepted death. Like most people have long left Seattle and they're just hanging out. They like give them dinner, they're talking late at night, and um they're just they're just good sweeties. Pestilence sneaks in later to admit his feelings when he thinks Sarah's asleep, but she is not asleep. And oh, I wrote down that I have a quote. Okay. Go ahead. What were your thoughts of this section as
Oh,
I find this?
well, Pestilence, yeah. So when they encounter them, this like lovely, beautiful elderly couple who are just like so ready to, go to heaven, accept their death. They felt like honored to house them. And I was so suspicious. Just like Pestilence, like as soon as they started like being so nice and welcoming, like their
Oh
feelings,
yeah.
I was like, oh, they have some ulterior motive. They're gonna try and kill him. Something bad is gonna happen. No, they were just so sweet. And they were kind of like a parental, you know, like vibe towards Pestilence because they were like, hey, we can see what's going on here.
Hmm.
We've been around the block, you guys have feelings for each other, and they try to guide Sara to kind of realize what her purpose is in saving humanity with Pestilence. Because, hey, if he loves you and we think that he does,
Hmm.
you can stop him. Like he can stop killing if he loves you enough.
Hmm.
And so yeah, oh, that was so I cried. When they were in their beds or in their bed, because they succumb to death, they
Hmm.
get the sores, and Sara, as she does, is taking care of them.
Hmm.
Pestilence, um, I think this is one of the times where he sticks around because he
Hmm.
likes them. He wants to be there for them. And the husband goes first, and the wife has to lay there with him
Hmm.
in their bed. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very emotional for me to read. And then right when he dies, she gives her final words of like wisdom to Sara and Pestilence separately. Um, and then very shortly after, she also passes.
Hmm.
And I just couldn't help but think like if if I get the chance to go like that, like me and my husband together, I wanted to be just like that, like boom boom, because oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like baby crying
Yeah.
at that point.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It was so tender and a complete 180 from a lot of what we tend to see, which is a lot of the anger and desperation coming from people. And for them to have just accepted it. And at one point, Sara hears them praying for her, and she goes and tries to beg Pestilence not to let them die. And of course, he refuses. And you know, even Pestilence mentions that he hasn't seen a love like this before as they're spending their last hours together. Ruth's dying words definitely got to me as well, where she, tells Pestilence that the Lord deemed you fit to feel what it is to be human. And then she turns and assures Sara that, like, no, you can love him. And kind of she knew and she saw and supported it. And, a sad moment, but I think that was definitely one of the parts that stood out to me in this whole book.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for multiple reasons, but like the fact that they right off the bat were so accepting and helped them,
Yeah,
that was very different from the rest of the book, where it's just filled with like people hating on them and just trying to save their own
right,
ass.
right. And I think that, like, t taking it to a deeper conversation and thoughts around humanity, like ultimately we choose, right? We choose our emotions. We choose if we want to get all like fired up and go out swinging essentially. And I think I definitely Emma Ruth, where I'm like, you know what, if it's my last moments, I hope they're just like peaceful and, uh that felt like a beautiful yet sad moment in a book with a lot of absolute craziness.
Yeah, but like going along with the deeper emotions of it all, I think that a lot of the way people are like throughout their life shapes that too, because like Ruth and her husband,
Yeah.
they loved each other, they had a happy marriage, whereas like the hateful man before them,
Hmm.
he abused his family, they were not in a good
Right, right.
environment. So like they were kind of preparing, like that it's like a prelude to what their end is going to be like you're a
Hmm.
bad person in life, your
Hmm.
death's going to be bad, you're a good caring person in life,
Hmm.
your ending is going to be filled with like love and tenderness, and yeah, it was
Yeah.
just beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I do think it's interesting as well because I am not a religious person. I'll say like I'm a spiritual person. But I've always been able to see, I think, how comforting religion can be to people. So in the case of like Ruth and Rob, I think they had a confidence in their religion, and that also allowed them to have so much peace, kind of going into the unknown, which is, the afterlife or after death. Um, and so I always think that that's interesting, and I can see the comfort that it can also bring people as well, when it comes to
100%,
home
yeah. Because
things.
like,
Yeah.
if you don't believe that there's an afterlife and you think I just cease to exist,
Hmm.
um, yeah, you're gonna want to exist as long as you possibly can because you think that that's it.
Right, right. Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, yeah. Which is funny because I think so many of like that's been a huge theme in a lot of my like books or even kind of the few TV shows that I've been watching lately of just like that kind of quest to have unlimited life, you know? It goes on beyond the bounds of the natural. Um, so continuing on, he does help bury them and then joins her in the bath. And he still kind of is having a hard time grasping what love is. And they kind of boil it down to love is someone you want to spend all your minutes with. And I was like, oh, what a beautiful, simplistic answer to such a complex emotion.
Yeah, because it applies to different types of love too. Like now that I think about it,
Hmm.
because you have like a really close friend or like a family member, like you want to spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah.
Of course, that time spent is spent differently, but you want to spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, it's such a simple answer
Yes.
and like to such a variety of different types of love. So when they finally get to Seattle, it's pretty quiet and she's kind of confused at that. And she realizes that he actually rode through a few days ago. So he's kind of went ahead without her. So they maybe didn't account her as much. She didn't have to see as much because like the plague has already come through. It's already quiet. They continue down south, and she gets him to open up to her about his likes and dislikes, and he makes a claim that he is his task. And again, that kind of just shows that like forward it's hard because he like presents as human when he has a body and maybe looks more humanly to remember that like he is just pestilence. He's this thing that is beyond our comprehension that is now here on earth and um you know it's to ultimately just perform this task. And he also says that she's his favorite person. Slightly, well, I wanted to say slightly biased just to be an ass. Because, like, how many people has he gotten to know?
Yeah, that was exactly what I thought too. I was like, the only person that you've
Yeah,
had
there
like,
he goes. Like,
yeah.
yeah. Finally, they get down and dirty, and he is lost in his feelings. Like, he does not know. She obviously he's new to all this, so he's learning as well. There's a few like, oh, is everything okay here moments, and he says that it was absolutely heavenly, and he becomes obsessed. Like I don't know. I think I was surprised because I guess I didn't expect it, but it makes sense knowing his character because immediately he's like, let's go to a church. She's like, no, hang on. And he has a whole tantrum. It's a whole thing. Go for
Yeah.
it.
He was so ready. Like you, yeah, 100% did not expect it. And then after the fact, yeah, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
That tracks.
Just takes her to a church and didn't even think to ask. He was like, yeah, we're getting married now.
Yeah.
Like, well, I gave you my body. We are now married. She's like, whoa.
Pause.
Oh my God. I remember my jaw dropped. I was like, what? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it was quite a bit. all at
Yeah.
once.
But she pissed him off though, being like, "Nope, we're not doing that."
I love when he's like, she goes, "You're being an asshole." He goes, "Is nothing sacred?" He bellows, "I was inside you,
Yeah.
inside you. I felt you move around me. I gave you my essence, and you're treating it, all of it, as though we merely danced together." Um, which again, he's new to all this, so it's probably a lot more than any of us would ever expect. Um, and also, like, you can simplify love, and there's still a lot of like complexity to it. They both had vastly like different experiences compared to the rest of what they know, you know?
Yeah, and that was another like thought-provoking moment in the book for me because I initially I was like, silly Pestilence, like you don't get married right after sex. And then I was like, damn, but like do we treat sex as like it's something to just treat lightly like that? You know, like I think
Yeah.
a balance that needs to be struck there. And yeah, in that moment, they were very much opposite ends.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and I was just like, wow. It
And
was one
I
of
was like,
those.
yeah, I was like, this man would do anything for you after all. Like,
No, after one night, and she's like, "No, I'm good on that."
yeah, yep, yep. So they ride off again, and suddenly, yet again, half of his face is shot off. He falls, she's screaming, they keep shooting. This is where they get separated, and these people drag Sara to a church, and like she ends up stealing a gun to escape. Again, she saves Pestilence, and he makes it clear. Okay, after all that, again, my super concise notes. After she saves him, he is like, "Just so you know, we are love making. We are not fucking."
Yeah.
He's like
Oh
had
my
to
God.
set it clear. So she argues she is no longer his prisoner, and he finally agrees. So yeah,
And
a
we
little
knew,
more had to happen.
yeah, we knew that, but I was glad that they finally admitted it.
Yeah, good Lord. Took enough time. So at the next town, there is a prophet, all in white. He offers three women to save the rest, and Pestilence is like, no, that's not how this works. Um, and he's arguing that he won't change. She argues that he's living essentially right now, and as long as that happens, like you are going to change. That's just how this works. They continue on, and this time they basically almost get exploded. A gang crawls out, shoots Pestilence, knocks out Sara. Like things are escalating. They shoot her, she goes down, and Pestilence is like calling her name. He ends up taking her to a doctor and, trying to save her. And again, he's acting awfully human in his desperation because he finally admits that he loves her. Sara dies. And I was like, what is happening? As she dies, she talks to the fourth horseman, Thanatos, and she says that, he needs her and vice versa. So he decides to let her live. What were your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all happened so fast. I was like, boom, 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 like holy shit. Um, so I remember in the when he takes her to the hospital, the doctors like no one in there wanted to heal her. And
Hmm.
so he was basically like forcing them on pain of death to do it.
Hmm.
And I think he ended up killing like the whole hospital
Hmm.
because they wouldn't do it. And that's why she ended up dying. Um, which, yeah, again, another moment where I'm like, yeah, I mean, if I was them and Pestilence, the person killing my entire species, came and was asking for my help, no, I think I'm probably gonna pass on that, dude. But then also like as a doctor, you're like sworn to help people, and they're choosing not to do that um for this girl that has done nothing to them.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was just a struggle, but I was really surprised that Thanatos let her live. Obviously pleasantly surprised because I'm like, how does this end if she dies? But yeah, I that whole moment again, he was desperate. I like crying, like
Hmm.
angry, throwing everything around. Yeah, it was a very intense moment in the book.
Hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Um, so yeah, when she wakes up and comes back to life, that's when she realizes that, everyone is dead and that, they might admit that they're in love and there's still some complications they need to work out. Um, so he takes her to a mansion and kind of keeps her there for weeks until she heals. They are still bonding. It's a weird version of a honeymoon in some sorts. They're doing all sorts of spicy stuff in this mansion. And two things back to back. The first thing, she afterwards, she thinks, he'd make a good dad. Secondly, he goes, I'm sorry, Sarah. I was waiting for this and I thought maybe you getting better would change my mind, but it hasn't. It's only made me sure of what I need to do. And then he's gone. And you're like, what does he need to do? That was a lot to drop and that's all on the same page.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then he just shits all over everything because that's like he leaves to go do like a mass extermination of
Yep.
people while she's asleep because he's like, yeah, reinforcing my cause. Oh my God, I was so pissed. And then she wakes up to the news and sees what has happened. Um and justifiably is pissed. Like she's like, after everything we've been through, she dies, comes back to life. He admits that they love each other, blah blah blah. Still, this is happening, and yeah, I think that was her breaking point.
It was. And this is where we get to the point where he's ending the world and won't listen to her. And so she walks away. And this is where we get like a little bit of a time skip, where it mentions, she's probably been on the road for a while and she's kind of avoided talking to anybody and kind of like following what's been going on, where she realizes that people have actually recovered from the last outbreak and there's no more news of more people getting sick. So she makes it all the way back home, moves back into her apartment, kind of gets back to normal life. Mind you, her whole family and like everyone thought she had died because she stayed back when everyone left. And finally, Pestilence shows up.
I'm like, how do you explain that? Like she tries to integrate back into her life, and people are like, "Hey, how did everything go? Where have you been?" And like, what's she gonna say? Like, I fell in love with the horseman that was trying to kill everybody, you guys included. No.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And so he had kind of like followed her, but made sure to give her space. And, finally they cave to their feelings. She finally agrees to be his. He asks her to marry him. She says yes. And he also finally chooses a name for himself, and he chooses Victor. How fitting.
Yeah. I could not picture him as a victor though, but like I was like, I don't
No.
think there's any name. I would have been like, oh, this is right.
Right. That is a high. How do you name a horseman? Just like a common name, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and we get even more of a time gap for the very epilogue, which is 10 years after the horseman like first arrived. And we get this ominous, like, Victor can feel that war is coming. So it's not over. And that was the end of the book.
Yeah, man. First of all, like when they came back together, like Pestilence just shows up at her door, like I'm back, and they go through all that reunion stuff. I, I wanted more from that. I thought it
Yeah.
should have been a longer, bigger scene, like like multiple chapters. But yeah, I think that the epilogue where he feels war waking up, and
Mhm.
that's we go into the next book is war. I think that she just does Laura does a really good job setting that up. I mean, like it's very ominous. Ooh, war's back. I just hope that, and I wish that because I have already read the second book. I wish that she would talk about past horsemen more. You know what I mean? Like,
Ooh,
what's going
I
on with them?
see. Yeah. Good to know.
Hmm. But no, I
Yeah.
overall I really liked the book. You said you didn't like the ending though?
I no. Did I say that?
I think in the beginning you were like, oh, the ending. I don't remember you said like it pissed you off or what, but
Um, if anything, no, it surprised me. It surprised me for the like, I think like humanity of it, him kind of just like stopping everything, coming back, them, 'cause they had a kid, didn't they? Or like it alluded to them having children, a child.
yeah, I think they had two
Yeah,
mates.
yeah.
Mhm.
So like I think for me, it was an interesting, I like kind of like getting the little bow on their story so you kind of know how they end up. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting. And I think I was kind of surprised that it resolved the way that it did after you have a whole book of like torture and disagreements and everything. So I wasn't mad at it. I think the only thing, and it wasn't literally until I was thinking about it this morning that I realized what it was, because I was like, Sarah's kind of plain. Like, then I realized because I read so much like fantasy, I read a lot of like strong heroines with like powers and all this extra stuff. And by comparison, I would say Sarah is kind of plain. Um, I don't think that like takes away from her, and I think that could even like continue the conversation around humanity, where like I think more of us are far more average than we expect when we kind of want to stand out a little bit more. Um, and I know a lot of it was centered around humanity. And I think I always like little quirks that people have, maybe. So like we do get little moments with her with like the apple pie and stuff like that. But I thought that was an interesting like process my brain worked through where I finished the book and it was like, oh, she was just Sarah. And then I was like, okay, but it kind of makes sense also.
Yeah, but I mean it's hard to not want more in a female main character, right? Because like you have Petulance, who's like this crazy otherworldly being, and
Yeah.
like he's just in love with Sarah, But
Yeah.
that in itself is like, wow, like a horseman of the apocalypse can fall in love with just an average old person.
Yes.
Like that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. So I think it was a me problem, not a not a book problem comparative to what I had read before. But I think even in just like talking about it with you kind of made me like re-excited about the whole thing and looking at it through a different lens. Um, Robin Ruth, rest in peace, though.
My gosh. Yeah, it was rough. I don't cry at a lot of books. Like I did in the beginning when got into reading. But like recently, I don't know, it takes a lot for me to cry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a hard one.
It was, it was, it was. So I know you've already mentioned you've read the next one, so I will hop on that. as soon as I finish Belladonna, which I'm reading right now, so we can continue this conversation. I'm
Yeah.
excited. Um, but what did you end up rating Pestilence?
I gave it 5 stars. Because
Nice.
yeah, as Emmy would say, 5 stars is a feeling. And
Mm,
I ended that book and I was just like, any book where I have to like have a few minutes at the end to just like sit with it, I'm like,
yeah.
wow, yeah, that's a 5 stars. Because I read that during a time where already I was going through a lot, and like
Mhm.
the book, it was going, a lot was happening emotionally, and like we've been talking about this whole like time, humanity and like how fragile we are. And I think it just like it hit me really hard. And any book that could do that, 5 stars.
Amazing. Amazing. I
What
love
about
it.
you?
I did give it four.
Mhm.
And I think, I don't know why it hit me so hard, but like I wanted more. I think, like I said, I'm used to reading about very, um, more fantasy elements. I guess I think that's always kind of a slight drawback of when it's a little bit more modern or something that could happen in our like present day world, I guess. I think I get more excited about uh mystical worlds and kind of I want to get swept away by a fantasy drama. But I will say I think this book had a lot of great like we were going down the kind of human conscious rabbit hole and like the wide variety of emotions we have and just like looking at humanity as a whole. And I think there's a very strong argument that Sara, being just Sara, uh, accomplished so like she stopped one of the horsemen and they ended up falling in love and like what a great power to show your humanity, so um I think that was just like a personal preference for me, but I am excited to jump into the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, 5 stars is a feeling, and if you weren't feeling it, that's all
Fair.
you
Yeah,
can.
absolutely. Absolutely. But if you could let everyone know one more time where they could find you to see more of your amazing content.
Yeah, so Gabby gets reading on Instagram. I did post a review for Pestilence, so if you guys want to read that,
Woohoo!
yeah. Um, yeah, I post about what I'm currently reading on there and just have fun. So
Perfect. That's what we're all about, just having fun. So, thank you
yes.
so much for taking the time to join me. I'm glad we finally got to talk about it. And like I said, I will be reading War super soon, and we'll keep these coming out. If you've made it this far, I would love to know, what did you think of Pestilence? What did you think of Sara, just Sara, and the story as a whole? As always, you can watch this on Spotify and YouTube, and then I do have an Instagram and TikTok, and those both tend to get different content. So, um, yeah, thanks again, Gabby, for joining me, and I will bother you so we can get the next one set up to record.
Absolutely, yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.